You know, for the past 5 years, Formula One has had this split personality. When those yellow flags came out, you never knew what you were going to get, the menacing red Mercedes or that sleek British racing green Aston Martin. But as we head into the massive 2026 season, that's all over. Aston Martin has suddenly walked away from its high-profile safety car deal, which of course leaves us all asking one huge question. Why?
I mean, think about it. Why would a brand that's pouring billions into winning a championship suddenly ditch such a high-profile marketing gig, especially right after they spent a fortune fixing its biggest, most embarrassing problem? Well, the answer? It's a lot more complicated than you might think.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to rewind a bit and look at how this whole partnership even began. For like 25 years, it was all Mercedes. They had a complete monopoly on leading the F1 pack. So when Aston Martin showed up in 2021, it was a massive deal. But, and this is a big but, the partnership was basically controversial from day one.
Yeah, it was a really short run, but man, was it eventful. So Aston Martin crashes the party in 2021. By 2022, the drivers are already on the radio complaining about the car's speed. So Aston responds, rolls out this massive upgrade for 2024, and now, just when the car is finally where it needs to be, they're pulling out for 2026. It's a strange timeline, right?
And just like that, the experiment is over. From now on, whenever you see a safety car in F1, it's going to be a Mercedes. Only a Mercedes. End of story.
So, what actually went wrong here? Well, to understand the breakup, you have to go back to the one problem that really defined this whole partnership right from the start. An issue that got let's say, a very unflattering nickname.
Yup, that's the radio call. The one that took a technical problem and blew it up into a global PR nightmare for Aston Martin. It was the 2022 Australian Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen just did not hold back, calling a multi-million-dollar supercar a turtle? Ouch. And believe me, he wasn't the only driver thinking it.
And look, the drivers weren't just whining. There was a very real, very big performance gap here. On one side, you had the Aston Martin Vantage with 535 horsepower and pretty standard aero. On the other side, the Mercedes-AMG GT Black Series. We're talking a 730 horsepower, track-built monster with some seriously wild aerodynamics.
I mean, just look at that difference on the chart. It's almost 200 horsepower. When you're trying to lead the fastest cars on the planet around a racetrack, that is a gigantic deficit. From an engineering standpoint, it wasn't even a fair fight.
And this wasn't just about driver ego or pride. No, there was a serious technical problem. See, F1 cars need to keep their tires and brakes in this super narrow, super hot temperature window to work properly. The Aston was just too slow, so the drivers couldn't keep that heat in. And that's not just bad for performance on the restart, it can be a real safety issue.
Okay, so being called slow on a global broadcast, that's pretty much the worst insult you can throw at a performance car brand. But you gotta give Aston Martin credit here. They didn't just stick their heads in the sand. Nope, they went straight back to the drawing board and poured millions into fixing that turtle problem for good.
And they delivered. For the 2024 season, they unveiled this heavily upgraded Vantage safety car. The horsepower shot up from 535 to a massive 656. That's a 30% jump. Plus, they threw in a bunch of new aero and cooling bits to turn it into a genuine track weapon.
So with this new Vantage, plus an upgraded DBX 707 medical car, Aston Martin had finally done it. They closed a performance gap. The cars were fast, they looked amazing, and you know what? The drivers stopped complaining. Problem solved. Mission accomplished. Right? And this is where the story gets really weird. This is the central mystery. After all that public humiliation, after spending millions of dollars on a fix, after finally getting the car right, why on earth would they walk away now?
Well, the answer, as it turns out, has absolutely nothing to do with the car's performance anymore. It's all about business. A cold, hard business decision that's all tied up in Aston Martin's massive ambitions for 2026 and beyond.
So it really boils down to three key things. First, there's the new Honda partnership. Starting in 2026, Aston Martin becomes the official Honda factory team. Think about it. How awkward is it to have your brand represented by a safety car that's powered by your rival, Mercedes? Yeah, not a good look. Second, it's all about resources. The team is going all in on winning a championship. New factory, hiring superstar designer Adrian Newey, every single dollar and every ounce of focus has to go towards that goal. Running a safety car program is just an expensive distraction. And finally, you could almost say mission accomplished. They got the global eyeballs they wanted from the deal. Now, the focus isn't on marketing anymore, it's on winning.
So Aston Martin makes this big business move. But what does it actually mean for Formula One? And what about for their longtime partner, Mercedes?
Well, the most immediate change is that Mercedes-AMG is back in charge. They're once again the one and only supplier for both the safety car and the medical car at every single race. They're back to having that total control they held for 25 years.
But you know who this is actually a pretty big win for? The FIA, the sports governing body. F1 is about to go through this monster regulation change in 2026. So having one single, consistent, high-performance safety car gives them a stable benchmark. It just removes one giant variable from the equation during a time of huge technical change.
So there you have it. The green turtle is gone. A partnership that started as a big marketing splash got defined by a performance crisis and has now ended with a quiet, strategic business move. You know, this shared era gave us some variety and a pretty good story, but it also created some very real problems on the track. Which leaves us with a really interesting question to think about. Was having two brands competing for the safety car spot actually good for F1? Or is having one single undisputed top-tier supplier the smarter and maybe even safer way to go?